In front of these pyramids is the Sphinx, a still more wondrous object of art, but one upon which silence has been observed, as it is looked upon as a divinity by the people of the neighbourhood. It is their belief that King Harmais was buried in it, and they will have it that it was brought there from a distance. The truth is, however, that it was hewn there from a solid rock, and, from a feeling of veneration, the face of the monster is coloured red.
Those words are from Natural History, written by Pliny the Elder in the 1st century AD. This encyclopaedic collection of 37 books is the largest single work to have survived from the Roman Empire to the present day. It compiles information from a number of ancient authors and gives us a fantastic insight into world knowledge in this bygone era of history. And of course, ancient Egypt did not escape the attention of Pliny. And in this video, I'm taking a look at his claims in Book 36, Chapter 17, that says in Roman times, the local people believed the Sphinx contained the tomb of King Harmais. Most scholars take these claims with a pinch of salt, but as I showed in my last video, there is a rock-cut chamber at the bottom of the shaft in the back of the Sphinx, and when it was excavated in the 19th century, wooden boards were found inside. Furthermore, archaeologist Auguste Mariette burned these wooden boards, and they gave off a strong smell of resin, leading him to believe that this wood came from a sarcophagus. In 1897, archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt wrote that the vertical shaft on the back of the Sphinx does indeed end in a burial chamber, in which coffin boards were found, meaning that at some point in its history, the Sphinx acted as some kind of mastaba. So should we take Pliny's claims more seriously? Does he tell us the occupant of the burial chamber? And if so, who was King Harmais? Well, let's find out. Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe to the channel for regular content on ancient architecture, as well as all of the latest news from the world of archaeology. When I first learned about the legend of King Harmais, I thought I already knew his identity. In the New Kingdom of ancient Egypt, more than 1,000 years after the pyramids were built, the Sphinx was known as Makhet, meaning Horus in the horizon. It was a representation of this god, and it was venerated accordingly by all the powerful kings of the 18th dynasty and beyond, with new Sphinx temples, royal rest houses and stelae erected around the Sphinx. The Greek form of the Egyptian Makhet is Harmakis, and the cult worship of this god lasted until the Greco-Roman period. There are many Roman and Greek inscriptions found at the Sphinx, and they attest to its importance at this time. So, in the writings of Pliny, saying the Sphinx was the tomb of King Harmais does seem to make sense. Harmais must surely be the Latin version of the Greek Harmakis, but the true meaning became somewhat obscured, which is understandable, as Pliny wrote that the Sphinx tomb and its royal occupant was nothing more than a local belief, a legend. It would be a fair assumption that the Sphinx being a representation of the god Harmakis evolved into the Sphinx being the tomb of a King Harmais. But whilst I thought this, I myself had a few issues. For a start, the Sphinx was still honoured in Roman times. It's not like its identity became lost. A Roman stairway and viewing platforms were built in front of the Sphinx, and various emperors erected stelae. It wasn't a forgotten monument swallowed up by the sand. And Pliny is actually quite clear in that the monument itself was looked upon as a deity, and that a king was buried inside it. He was making two different points. Therefore, Am I making an unfounded assumption that King Harmais and Harmachis are one and the same? Could Harmais actually be the Latinized name of an Egyptian pharaoh? Well, some people, past and present, do think this. If you read Howard Weiss's Operations Carried On at the Pyramids of Giza, Book 3, you'll notice that he reprints the writings of Henry Salt regarding the Sphinx excavations undertaken by Giovanni Caviglia in 1817. Regarding the writings of Pliny, Salt believed that King Harmais was actually King Amasis, the first king of the 18th dynasty. And whilst the Sphinx had newfound importance in the 18th dynasty, it doesn't look like this was during or immediately after the reign of Amasis, more commonly known as Ahmose I. But Weiss does add a footnote, saying, quote, "Another king of the same name reigned 570 BC towards the end of the 26th dynasty." End quote. And he's right. This is King Ahmose II, or King Amasis II to the Greeks, and he's believed to have reigned from 570 to 526 BC. He's known to history as the last great ruler of Egypt before the Persian conquest. The identity of King Harmais being Amasis was also claimed by Christopher Harrant in the 16th century. Johann van Slaben thought the same in 1678, saying, quote, "Pliny saith that it was the tomb of King Amasis." End quote. The Prussian Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius also thought that Pliny may have been referring to Amasis. The Greek word for Amasis is this, and the Greek word for Harmachis is this. As you can see, both look quite similar. Whatever the truth, it does seem possible, however unlikely, that Pliny is actually referring to King Amasis II of the 26th dynasty. But is this all the evidence we have for King Amasis II being buried in the Sphinx? That a few historical writers believe that Pliny, using second-hand information, was referring to King Amasis II. Admittedly, this really isn't great evidence, but also, isn't the burial place of this king well documented? Amasis II died around 526 BC, and although his tomb has never been discovered, the record of its location and existence come from the writings of Herodotus. He says that Amasis was buried at the royal necropolis of Sais, within the temple enclosure of Neith, Sais being the old capital city in the 26th dynasty Sate period. Herodotus also mentions the desecration of the mummy of Amasis, which happened when Egypt was conquered by the Persian king Cambyses. He says, quote, "No sooner did Cambyses enter the palace of Amasis than he gave orders for his body to be taken from the tomb where it lay. This done, he proceeded to have it treated with every possible indignity, such as beating it with whips, sticking it with goads, and plucking its hairs. As the body had been embalmed and would not fall to pieces under the blows, Cambyses had it burned." End quote. So, this does seem to be pretty convincing evidence that Amasis was buried in Sais, but still there is no physical evidence to back up this account. And although it is a logical assumption that Amasis would have been buried in a royal necropolis in the Sate period capital of Sais, the story of the mummy desecration could well have been propaganda, to strengthen the position of the new ruler of Egypt. How do we know Cambyses even got the right mummy? How do we know the Persians were being truthful in this gruesome tale of victory? Herodotus would have gotten the story from Persian sources, and because history is always written by the victors, unless it can be corroborated, it can't be accepted as a fact without supporting evidence. But do we have any supporting evidence for a possible Amasis burial at Giza? I have to say, I didn't think there would be, but I started to research the final resting places of the close family of Amasis. In his life he did have a number of wives, but his great royal wife was Queen Nakhtubasterau, and we know all about her because of a stela in the famous Serapeum of Saqqara. She held the titles King's Wife, His Beloved, Great One of the Het's Sceptre and Great of Praises, and was she buried at the capital city of Sais? Amazingly, no. She was buried at Giza, in rock-cut tomb number G9550. Her amazing anthropoid black granite sarcophagus was taken from the tomb and is now in a museum in St. Petersburg in Russia. And where is tomb G9550? Well, it's actually pretty close to the Great Sphinx, just 500 feet to the west, and just north of the Khafre Causeway. In this region we find a number of pits, and I'm struggling to find out which one it is, but it's definitely one in this group. And from here you can see the rump of the Sphinx, and that's the location of the rock-cut chamber inside it. Furthermore, the tomb of the great wife of King Amasis is also shared with their son, also called Ahmose or Amasis after his father. He was a great military general, and he was known as Chief of Archers in the 26th dynasty. The tomb was discovered by Carl Richard Lepsius, and is also known as Lepsius Tomb 83, and, as you can see, it's in a prime location on the Giza Plateau. According to Zahi Hawass in his paper on the Khufu statuette, these high-profile burials show renewed popularity of Giza in the 26th dynasty, because we see dignitaries and royalty choosing to be buried close to the Sphinx, aka the god Horemheb, whose cult and popularity continued all the way through to the Greco-Roman period. But if you're the great royal queen, wouldn't you want to be buried close to your husband, close to the king? If Amasis was laid to rest in Sais, wouldn't that be your desired burial place? Or could Pliny be correct? Did Amasis II break the royal tradition of his era and choose to be buried at Giza? It is a question impossible to answer, but we do know that Giza had renewed importance in the 26th dynasty. Also, the tombs of the Queen and the Prince are not the only two important State period tombs at Giza. Many Old Kingdom rock-cut tombs were repurposed, and new burials were dug next to the Sphinx and also around the Great Pyramid. Furthermore, during his reign, it's well known that King Amasis II was aligning himself with the glory days of the Old Kingdom, rebuilding the Temple of Ptah at the Old Kingdom capital of Memphis, erecting a new Temple of Isis, and more. He also put his own likeness on Sphinx statues, just like what the kings did in the Old and New Kingdoms. But would he really choose a burial place away from Sais, away from the capital city? Well, maybe he broke this tradition because in actual fact he did not have royal blood. He was powerful and successful, but he was also a rogue pharaoh. He does have an interesting story. Before becoming king, Amasis II was a military general under Pharaoh Apries. After a disastrous military expedition to Cyrene in Libya, the Egyptian troops suspected that Apries betrayed them, and that the king might rule more absolutely by means of his Greek mercenaries. Many Egyptians sympathised with their army, and what followed was a revolt. General Amasis was sent to stop the uprising, but he was pronounced king by the rebels. Apries ended up fleeing to Upper Egypt, and after a fight back he was defeated, and he was forced to flee to Babylon. Amasis then defeated the former king and a Babylonian army. His new power was now cemented, but his claim to the throne was certainly unorthodox. He was a military general turned pharaoh, so maybe If anyone could break the traditions of the said period and choose to be buried elsewhere, well, it was King Amasis II. And what better place than Giza, the place where Egypt's glorious history and power was on full display with the amazing and unrivaled pyramids of Giza. And where to be buried? Well, if you can't build your own pyramid, what better final resting place than inside the largest bedrock monument in Egypt, the iconic statue of the god Harmais, the Great Sphinx, a monument that we know underwent restoration in the 26th dynasty, and maybe part of this restoration involved the hollowing out of a chamber inside it. The holes in the historical record are great for the imagination, and although the truth may never be fully known, maybe we should not dismiss the words of Pliny so quickly. Maybe the Sphinx did become the tomb of a king, and not just any king, but a truly powerful king, a rogue king, and a king known for his love of Egypt's glorious history. Was the Sphinx the tomb of Amasis II? What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.